Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and buenos dias. I think it's the same in Spanish and in Portuguese. I was not so sure about Portuguese, but buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches. I'm sure this is different in Portuguese. But it's a great pleasure to be here opening this first seminar of the, or webinar of the series of diversity webinars for ALBA, and in particular for these diversity issues in Latin America. We have decided to give it a title, what are the main barriers for people in Latin America to succeed in brain sciences, trying to cover in this first webinar the different issues that could be maybe an obstacle for brain scientists to thrive, and then with the goal to eventually perhaps identify those that require a deeper treatment, so that eventually we can discuss in following webinars or these issues, or perhaps decide doing particular actions if we think we can tackle them. So it's a great pleasure also to be with this wonderful panel of colleagues to discuss the issues. And I think we have a very exciting program, so I don't want to take much of the time, but at the beginning it's good to leave the participants, the attendees upcoming. So what we are going to do is to have two different parts for this webinar. There will be first one in which Ana Silvia is going to present the results of a survey that was done by IBRO-Larc on diversity issues in different Latin American countries. And this is going to be debated and discussed by Elaine and Zulma Dueñas. And then afterwards, we are going to have a panel in which different colleagues here are going to introduce different issues, those that they consider are key to understand which are the barriers in Latin America, and also to start proposing some actions that we can undertake. And this is a webinar that it's organized by the ALBA Network, and I'm sure that many of you might be familiar by now with the ALBA Network, but probably not everyone. So I would like to take a couple of minutes to introduce the ALBA Network. And for this, I'm going to share a screen. A network with a mission to try to advocate for adversity and equity in brain sciences. And the reason for this is that a couple of years ago, precisely 2.5 years ago, a group of colleagues decided to create this network because we really felt that we were lagging behind in many of the issues related to diversity. The principle, in the origin of this network, the focus was on gender issues, and it was first a group of colleagues that was mainly based in Europe, but very quickly we realized that gender issues are not different to other issues by underrepresented groups, and we decided to tackle quite from the very beginning the different types of diversity. So we've been working within ALBA on the definition of diversity, what we understand by diversity. And we think that it has to do with the incorporation of scientists from many different backgrounds, so that gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, age, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, nationality, religion, or culture shouldn't be an issue for any of us to thrive and to have the opportunity to work in brain sciences, because diversity is fundamental for working together and creating better science. So this is the mission of the ALBA Network, to advocate and to support the development of these of actions that would foster equity, diversity, and inclusion in brain sciences. Just a short note on why the network is called ALBA. As many of you know, of course, because this is a Latin American webinar, ALBA in Spanish and also Italian means sunrise. And this is the vision for ALBA and the understanding that we have of this movement. We think that many things are changing in the field. in academia, in science, that also in society, we are acknowledging that it's important to incorporate diversity, and many people are also committed now to do this. So there is an incredible momentum to have this type of movement. And what ALBA wants is to be a catalyzing energy or force that comes, I think, pure in the morning, and that it's a positive one, and wants to help this change so that we make it possible, that we make it definitive, and we make it faster, and we make it also well by helping each other. So this is the concept for ALBA. In ALBA, we are doing now different actions and activities as we develop the network, because it takes time to put everything together. I'm going to go through a few of them, but I'm going to do this by looking at what are the specific goals that we have started giving ourselves, and then indicating which actions we are doing for each of these goals. So we think that in order to make this change, it's important to recognize outstanding contributions to science and diversity, because it's important to have role models, but also it's important to, I think, prize the colleagues that are devoting efforts in order to make this happening. And for this, we have awards that we are creating. We already have one. We are in the process of creating 2 others. And this is an award for the Diversity Prize that we do together with the FKNI, the Defense CAFLI Network. And that's why this award is with a European focus. We already had an awardee that was last year, Erin Schumann. She got the prize at the time of the Defense Forum. And there is a nice video that you can see in the ALBA website and of her acknowledging of the prize. At the moment, we have the open call for nominations for this prize until the 8th of March. So I encourage anyone that has colleagues working in Europe or European colleagues to nominate. But soon we will have other broader awards. So I think this might be something interesting for many of you. In order to also promote colleagues from different backgrounds, we had these video clips that are short interviews that highlight both the personality and the science from many colleagues from different backgrounds, from China, Africa, Turkey, India, etc. And they are very interesting, and I think it's a way of understanding better the mission also of having this diversity into brain sciences. And you can also see all those in the website, and the same for this podcast series that it's under development at the moment. There will be more chapters. At the moment, there are these 4 that comes every few weeks. Perhaps some of you know José Cepeda, who is a Latin American, I think Mexican of origin, nice scientist working in his PhD, but also a poet. And then many of the other scientists also very inspiring and very interesting stories. These are interviews of around 20 minutes that I really recommend you because they are quite inspiring and also engaging. So in addition to these actions, we also try to share best practices to counteract bias, because that's a way to work together so that not everything has to start from scratch. And here what we have in the website is resources, which are kind of folders for different topics that are timely and that can be useful for different type of people. For example, there is a folder that puts together different resources that people can get access related to the impact of COVID-19 on women and minorities in science. So this might be of interest to you. Or for example, also gender bias in scholarly peer review. If you want to document it, you can find a lot of resources, neuroracism, scientists with disabilities, so on and so forth. And yeah, these are some of the actions that we do to try to promote and support best practices. But also one of the major milestones has been recently the launching of the ALBA Declaration. I don't have time to go into details here. There was a launch at the SFN Global Connectome with a panel that was quite interesting. You can also listen to this discussion in the ALBA website. And just to make a long story short, even the declaration at the moment is just a one-page document, but I think it's very complete because it gives guidelines of what are the important points that we should take into account when we want to have a very proactive change in our workplace culture and also to combat implicit bias. By the time the declaration was launched, there were already 167 major organizations that endorse it as signatories. At the moment, it's close to 200 and to 400 individuals. Of course, this is only the start. And I would like to encourage everyone to have a look at the declaration. And if you think it's important, go to your institution and also yourself, you can endorse it. And you can do all this through the ALBA website. So to finalize, other major goals that we have at the moment for the network is providing networking. And this is something we are doing now a little bit, also mentoring opportunities and also support career development of members of underrepresented groups. This is something in which we are working and we hope to be launching some programs quite soon. And this particular webinar today is very important also for us to gather information of what are the important points to tackle. So I think your feedback during and afterwards is going to be very important. So for this networking, this is a little example of some of the things we've been doing. Before the pandemic, we had fun and we met, for example, for breakfast at the SFN, but also we had some networking in other major conferences like the ECMP. Then the pandemic came and then many of the actions had to be changed to be virtual. Like, for example, in Defense Forum, that was the case. We had a lot of different webinars. So I have to run. I think I got a click. We have funding partners, which are FENS, IBRO, SFN, and they are supporting us, and we are part also of their programs, and also supporting partners, the Brain Prize and the Balloni. We collaborate with many organizations. You can have a look at them in the website. Perhaps today I would like to highlight Falang with Elaine Delbert, who is the president, but also we collaborate with many other organizations, including IBRO and the Young IBRO. And we have a wonderful support from the office. And here I would like to thank particularly Lorian Nale, who is been in charge of this webinar organization, and also Matilde for all the wonderful work. Go to the website, please register as a member, sign the declaration, and also get in touch. You can follow us in the social media. And I thank you for your attention. I think I have to stop because time is running. So yeah, I think it's now time to ask Ana Silvia, who's been championing and leading the IBRO-Larc survey, to present herself, to introduce herself and also the results of the survey. Ana?
Okay, thank you very much, Carmen. Thank you for the invitation and for the introduction. I am super glad to be here in this timely webinar. And I think it's wonderful that we have these discussions today. So I work in behavioral neuroscience. I'm based in as professor of the Universidad de la República in Montevideo, Uruguay. I am also the chair of the Inclusion and Diversity Committee in the International Society for Neurotology. And I am member of the IBRO Latin American Regional Committee, and that is mainly the reason why I am here today. I will share now my screen. Please confirm me that you are seeing my presentation.
Perfect.
Okay. So, as I was saying, the reason I'm here is because as member of the IBRO Latin American Regional Committee, we have been working, and it has been recently published, a study on gender inequities in Latin American neuroscience community. So this was an initiative, as I said, of this Latin American Regional Committee of IBRO, And we worked together with members of the Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean, which is named in Spanish CEPAL. And these are the people that actually worked in this, this work, and this is the paper that has been published recently as a review article of the study we made. So we worked in the last 2 years. This began in a regular meeting of the Latin American Regional Committee of IBRO, where we had the initiative, and then we got this agreement with CEPAL members to study the gender balance in Latin American neuroscience community. As you see here, the final report is available in either Spanish or English in the website of CEPAL or IBRO respectively. So the purpose of this study was to gather information about gender balance among Latin American neuroscientists, which we were surprised to learn that was not available. I mean, it has been largely documented that despite the advances of women in neuroscience, there are still gaps that persist in at least 3 dimensions. For one side, the horizontal segregation, that means that the scientific areas which men and women are inserted are different. The vertical segregation, which means the progress of men and women in their training, which is also different and delayed for women. And the glass ceiling effect, which is a consequence of this and means that women face more problems to reach to the highest positions. So these gaps are known to be found in different countries, in different cultures, and their causes are diverse and are being profoundly studied and range from discrimination, the influence of discrimination, gender stereotypes, and also the influence of family life. However, in Latin America, we didn't have information about neuroscience and in this type of topics. And there are only few studies that merge the influence of different aspects that we know are influential on these gender gaps. So that was our big mission, to have not only information about how many women and men, but also about their lives, their decisions in the ongoing of their careers. And we did this by pursuing a survey. The survey, we invited all the members of the Latin American societies that are engaged in IBRO. And although not all the societies were responsive, we had responses from 6 countries, and members of their national societies for neuroscience filled this electronic survey, and we got a quite good representation, which was variable across countries, but it was good enough for at least 4 of the 6 countries that participated in this study. So first, I will present some of the results, and this one is very important to look at because it was good to find that there were no bias in the percentage of, for example, PhDs in these national societies. Men and women alike were in their majority PhDs as members of these national societies. However, when we analyze, there were gender differences in the way men and women perceived how their careers were influenced by their family life. And this is interesting here. You can see that while men and women were both perceived that both perceived that having children influenced their careers, only the majority of women perceived that their careers influenced in the decision of having children, which is a twist, but it is a very interesting twist that was very biased between men and women. Also, the time it took for men and women to get their PhD degree was also different. And I think this graph, this plot here is also very interesting to show that how children, how becoming mothers or fathers affected their careers. As you see here, for example, having children delayed the time to obtain a PhD degree for both, for men and for women. But if you analyze here, for example, the difference, the delay in years between men with children, which are dotted gray, and men without children, which is solid gray, the delay is lower than for women, which is the dotted green with respect to the solid green. So this delay, which is greater for women with children with respect to women without children, can be as big as 4 years or even more. Something that we were glad to document for the first time in the Latin American neuroscience community is like the general trends that have been largely described in other communities. And this is a way of showing how the vertical segregation is having a role here, and it's a way of showing the glass ceiling effect. What I'm showing here is 1 represents like an equal representation for men and women. Above 1 represents that it's biased in favor of men, and below 1 is biased in favor to women. And the different colors of these dots represents the different stages of the career. So the highest is number 4, which is gray, this grays here, which is the level of the full professor. It was quite hard to homogenize all these levels among and across countries, but we are confident of these classes. But what we found is that not only in the total global average, but for each one of the countries, the highest level is strongly biased in favor of men. So it is more difficult for women than for men to reach the highest positions in their academic careers. This is a way of showing the glass ceiling, and it is the first time for this neuroscience community. The other things that were not surprising and that are already reported for other communities is, for example, the horizontal segregation. More men than women prefer or are inserted in topics and disciplines such as neurophysics, mathematics, and engineering, while women prefer psychology, health, and chemical sciences within neuroscience. And also that they have more interrupted their training path than men, and that in total there are more PhD students than men than women, and more master students, women than men. All like general trends that have been described in other communities. But there were also specific trends in which we paid special attention. And these specific trends, I will describe a couple of them because of the time. And one of those is that this is very interesting and probably very specific for Latin American community, because more men than women do their PhD abroad. And this may have an important impact on the future of their careers. For Latin American communities, having this interaction with the international mainstream neuroscience and international networking during the moment in which they pursue their PhD can be very important, and it's being sex different. So it can be something that has an impact in the careers in the long term also. There is also an interesting point that has not been quite observed in others, is that the average number of undergraduate students supervised is, undergraduates are more supervised by women than men. And this is also something that can have impact, because women are devoting energy in students that are not as productive as, for example, graduate students. And finally, I will also like to highlight that it was surprising for us to see that Latin American neuroscientists are highly dissatisfied with their careers. And this dissatisfaction is also gender biased. More women than men are dissatisfied. And even though we all know that neuroscience, doing science is something very with a high motivation, and we were not expecting to have this negative perception of their careers, and also the differences by which men and women are dissatisfied of their careers are also different. While men are dissatisfied because of the financial and academic problems, women are more worried about how to conciliate personal life, family life with work life. So this is a very brief summary, and I will stop here because I am really willing to hear the other panelists and their interpretation of the data, and also the full discussion that we may have. But as IBRO-Larc member, we are responsible for providing the field of equal opportunities, men and women alike, for future neuroscience. And now we have this documented, we feel and understand that we have to move from this awareness that we are now documenting to the actions to take to solve this problem. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will be participating of the discussion as in the few minutes.
Thank you so much, Ana. This was very, very, I think, important for points of discussion and revealing. So now I would like to ask Francesca Cirulli, who is a member of the Board of Directors of ALBA, to continue with the discussion. Sharing.
Yes, thank you, Carmen. So I think it's been already very stimulating what we've heard. And while this is a general survey, right, on many different countries, I think we can have now the opportunity to discuss with two representatives of two different countries, Brazil and Colombia, how these differences can be now colored in a different way by the experiences that you have had in your own country. And so I will ask, first of all, Elaine Del Bel to introduce herself, tell us who she is, where she works, and then comment on what she has just heard. Thank you, Elaine.
I'm not reading all the things, okay? So I am a physiology professor at the University of São Paulo, Brazil, but in Ribeirão Preto. I'm very proud to say that I got the Vernix Grafstein Prize Award in 2018. And it is something that is for women that advocate for women, for the number of, for mentoring. I am actually until September, I believe this year, the president of Federation of Latin American and Caribbean Neuroscience Societies. I'm part of ALBA, what make me feel really proud of ALBA steering committee. And just now in this year, I became a member of the IBRO-Larc committee. So I'm going to be Ana and I will be together as colleagues. Okay, so I would like, let me just, I need to, I don't know how to stop this. Can you see this? Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, so I would like to congratulate to Ana and all the Latin America LARC committee because the work that they did is really pioneer, is really wonderful, no? And just I just put some words that about this that what Ana presented, but as a president of the Falan, I have been reading and thinking a lot about that, about Latin American region. And I just would like to share some concerns about not just women, but also underrepresented minorities that Ana told something. Okay, so it is important to think that there is preconception concerning race and socioeconomic states in Latin America, a lot. Another thing that this make that it's impossible to have impartial access to education, to research, to have equitable opportunities to contribute to research. This is there is a strong bias, no? And I want to just to emphasize that COVID-19 make this bias deep, so more inequalities. And nowadays, girls and everybody that are PhD students or even that finish postdocs are really worried with the future. Because like in my country, in Brazil, we have less academic positions and there is, much less science investment. So the future is now, let's say, really black, no? But I've been thinking also concerning what is to be done, that what as Ana was telling, from, just to see what is possible to do to change something, to try to, no? And one thing that I consider really important is that there is implicit biases that we all hold, even scientists, and even in scientists all over the world are perpetuating this bias. So it's something that we need to look to ourselves, what is happening, no? Another thing, a recent paper from 2020 showed that the problems with, specifically with gender, is not just during the process, okay, of the career, but during the career, because women, if they just go to academic, had an academic place, they need much more energy to much more effort to keep it going, to publish and to do everything. And sometimes this is a strong reason why they just give up the scientific work, okay? So something that we can pay attention, be vigilant on, no? It is important to be sure that women and minorities, they have, they are at meetings as speakers, they become members of committees, they also work in journals leadership. Okay, I don't know any women that are, just the chief editor-in-chief in some journals. Okay, this is safety to conduct work, because of all the problems that gender have, okay? Also warranty of research support to ask scientists to increase the number of mentoring women and underrepresented minorities. I know that Greg is going to speak about that, but it's a really important point to open the doors, no? Another thing is increase the number of citations. There are several reports showing that women as first or last author they have much less citations than men, no? And also to be vigilant, to help people to get in the work publishing. Why this emphasis and get the work publishing? This is a representation that I took from the Physiology News. It was a King Barrett article that it is interesting because if you have fewer publications, you are going to have less visibility. If you have less visibility, it's fewer invitations to speak, to serve in committees, and so on. And it means less research funding. So it's a snowball and difficult to stop it. And one thing that I particularly have been really worried is concerning the open science publication. Of course, I think it would be wonderful if everybody in the world could have free access to all the publications. But it's important to remember that less publications and authors will come from the countries that have less resources. So would be because the expense, the fees are the scientists need to pay. So less chance to publications, okay? And so it is important to be aware that the complexity of the problem, the challenge of the problem. So maybe to think about a system that is open and for everybody, okay? And as a group, what should we do about that? No, sorry. It's maybe more global investment to help those, in this case, no, more investment in research publication, research capacity. And so maybe ALBA or IBRO or even each one of us to do you know, a campaign with the World Bank, World Economic Financial things and other entities that work in this space.
Thank
so
Elaine.
It's fine. Okay, finish. Thank you, Francesca.
Perfect.
So, it isn't that Ana didn't talk about those things, but just reinforce those aspects. So thank you very much. And I think we have hope. Gozi Okondo Iweala, it's a Nigerian person that it was elected as the president of World Commercial Organization. So women are more and more protagonists in many wonderful things. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Elaine. It's good that women are always, you know, bringing hope and energy. So I think this is really very good. And I will now give the floor to Zulma Dueñas. She's bringing us a flavor from Colombia. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Francesca, and thank you, everyone. I'm really glad, as Ana said, to be here because this is a great opportunity for us, not only to share about what's happening with women in science in Colombia, to meet people and meet girls like all of you and guys like you. So, as you said, my name is Zulma Dueñas. I'm professor at the National University of Colombia at the medical school. And I was the first Colombian Pew Latin American Fellow in biomedical science. I point that because the first time that I applied, I was rejected. And it was not only because women from Colombia and want to go back, so it was hard, but after I get it, and it was a very nice experience. And actually, I am the president of the Colegio Colombiano de Neurociencias, COLNE. I don't know if everyone is looking my slides yet? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So what about our concerns related with the distribution of research groups in Colombia? We have a lot of groups. This is very hard to say because those numbers mean the number of groups of research that we have, but are small groups, are not huge and very organized group like in Brazil or Argentina or different countries. And on top of that, those groups are just located in special regions, and the consolidated groups are fewer. We have, of course, as many of the Latin American countries, low investment for science. And from all those groups, just the 35% of the women belong to those. And the universities that get all the consolidated groups and the more amount of publications, papers, are the National University that is in Bogotá, located in the main city, the capital. They have a place in Medellín too. The Universidad de Antioquia that is in Medellín, Universidad del Valle that is in Cali, and Universidad del Norte that is in Barranquilla. This means that these few universities and some of the others that are in Bogotá, like Sabana, Andes, Javeriana, have small groups, many papers, but less women's. The majority of groups that have women's are not even huge groups. And this coincidence with the results that Ana already presented. We have most of the same problems and almost the same results. The first time that I was reading this report, I was surprised because Colombia wasn't there, but we had the same problems, the same situations, and all the same characteristics of the population that they analyze. However, we have 50 members, regular members. We are a very small society of neuroscience here, just 55 members, but from those 26, we are women. Even on that, it's clear there are difficulties related with the activities inherent to women. This means, of course, we notice that, for example, for our research and our activities like maternity or motherhood, we have to invest more time, and it's harder for us to get the same rhythm of work. We are the home carers, we are daughters, caregivers, and of course we have to take care of the home and the house, because historically those are activities inherent to women. And this means we had not an equilibrium of opportunities, because of course here, as Ana showed, in all the Latin American countries, guys have more opportunity to get on top of the positions, and girls always we are behind. The credibility is another point that is hard to say, but men in Colombia can give an opinion. Women can really do an analysis of the situation, but the community believes to men, because it's the word of a man, more than a really analysis of the woman. And this it's even hard to take, because all the small but few researchers that are on top on the neuroscience groups have really strong positions and more credibility. So what we can do and what we expect to continue working. Now we have a minister of the science and technology that is a woman. Of course, have half of the country against her, but we are trying to work all together. First, to provide support to academic mothers. We have many girls, students, and even PIs that have family, and it's harder, as Ana already said and showed in his report. we have to work in favor of participation of women in administrative and political positions. Usually are guys that get those positions. And again, here we are changing, and we have dean from the university. That is the first time that we have a girl, well, a woman here. And the third thing is we try to develop training courses for minority groups of women. Like I show you in the country, in the map of the country, we have the coast, the east and west, both extremes, really less people working on science. So we want to give this opportunity to have small schools and summer trainings to try to get these girls involved in science. And last one is try to promote the establishment of policies of equality. How we can do it now that we have a girls on top of these administration groups, we are trying to get close connection to improve the way to send grants, to open these grants and check and take an idea of the small groups to push them and not always give more money. As Elaine said, more publications, more money. No, we want to really push the small groups to go up and get a strong support. So these are the things that I feel are a bit different from the survey. However, we find all the survey very like if we already answered, because they have many common results. So thank you so much for inviting me. Those are the things that we want to show. And thank you, Ana, for these very nice results that you show, because as you said, no one documented already. And thank you, Elaine, for showing another topics that we have to care. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Zulma. And I think we have already had a very, very nice overview of, you know, I think this was in Ana Silva's slides, what's new, no? I mean, we really, many of these things we know them, but the fact that we know them is not sufficient, right? To actually change things. And I think what we would like to do, and there will be discussion now, and at the end of this webinar, is to come up with action points, with things that need to be done in order to change the situation. I think what we have heard is that there are barriers. There are barriers for women, but there are barriers also for minorities. So it's not just a matter of gender. It's a matter of looking at minorities. And I think this is very true in Latin America. I feel very close because I come from a country like Italy, where, you know, we have a lot of similar social, you know, barriers and social differences. So socioeconomic status is really a very important determinant here. And so this is something that that came out. And so we really need opportunities that are that can favor everybody, you know, independently from where from their social background. I think we have heard also how important are biases, implicit biases, and these biases, they start in school. So the horizontal segregation that we see, that you have shown, Ana Silva, is something that should be, you know, probably addressed very, very early on, when children are, you know, don't have biases, so before they get the bias. And also, I think it was very interesting what Zulma also said about the fact that in a country like Colombia, where neuroscience is maybe less developed, there are fewer women in science and in neuroscience. So this is another important bias. The other very important thing that will need to be discussed is how the COVID situation, of course, is going to affect all of this. Because by creating different, you know, greater gaps, then we may even go backwards rather than going forward. So I think this is really something that should be also discussed in the future. So I think we have a lot of topics, very interesting topics that can be also addressed also by, of course, the public. And I will leave it now to Carmen to introduce the second part of this webinar.
Thanks so much, everyone. It's wonderful. I think we have indeed many points for actions and also discussion. Now we have a second part that's going to be presentations of different issues that are identified by the different panelists. And I would like to call Gregory Quirk, Greg, to present first.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Carmen, for inviting me to this ALBA symposium. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Gregory Quirk. I'm a professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Neurobiology at the University of Puerto Rico in San Juan. And I've worked for many years with the Society for Neuroscience on the Milady Neuroscience Training Course and the Latin American Training Program. And I'm a former chair of the US-Canada Regional Committee of IBRO. I come from the United States. My mother lives in Connecticut. I was trained in New York City. But I came to Puerto Rico 23 years ago, really to facilitate the development of neuroscience training and mentoring here on the island. And really with the purpose of overcoming this diversity gap in neuroscience. So in terms of barriers that I see in my laboratory here, there are a few. When students come in, they have issues with communication, so communication skills, and a sense of understanding. In other words, to realize when you really understand something versus when you really don't understand it. There's also an issue about confidence in their knowledge and their knowledge of the literature, confidence in their thoughts, their opinions. And then there's a lack of understanding of philosophy of science. Really, what is science? What is knowledge, and what are you doing if you're a scientist? What are you actually engaged in? So to address these issues, we do this through a mentoring program here. And the main idea of this talk is that mentoring is a very powerful tool to rectify injustices in science. In other words, training students that are really empowered and really functional. They're able to do anything under any conditions in any environment, giving people the tools they need to really succeed. So what we do is, so after 20 years, these are the things that work in the lab. So journal clubs are very, very key. In other words, they're held weekly without fail. If I'm traveling or out of town, there's still the journal club. Everyone reads the paper very carefully, and then a presenter presents a write-up, writes a one-page write-up of the thing. We all critique the write-up that the presenter made. And that way we work on writing skills and communication. And then we all really work on fully understanding the paper, realizing that we didn't all understand everything. And even I come away from it realizing things that I didn't understand. So, you know, they see we can really understand the thinking, the logic, the strategy of this paper, and then relate it to our own work. We also do weekly lab meetings. Again, sine fia, without fail, every week there's a lab meeting, whether I'm in town or not. It rotates, students will present their data, and the whole group will discuss, you know, what is she trying to get at with these experiments? Where is she heading with this? What would be the next best step for this research program? And it's very important to really come together as a group and decide what's the next best step. Everyone participates in these. The undergraduates present as well as graduate students and postdocs. And we find that it's interesting, in the report they talked about undergraduates had more female mentors. When I started my lab, I was sort of against undergraduates, saying, well, maybe that's not worth the effort. But I've learned in my years here that undergraduates are very, very key, important part of a high-powered laboratory. They bring fresh ideas, fresh approaches, and these are the students that are going to go on to graduate school. In fact, many come in as pre-meds, going to medical school, and they realize, I love science, I want to do this. And so they shift over to graduate school, and then they go on to really top-notch programs. So I think training undergrads, at least for me, has been a very important goal and purpose for me. Finally, we do retreats, philosophy of science retreats on a yearly basis. And there we address what is knowledge, what is science, what is progress, what does it mean to be a scientist? You've chosen to be a scientist. What have you chosen? What does that really mean? Do you know what science really is? And we address these issues. We read the classic Popper and Kuhn and Ramon y Cajal talking about discovery based on the continent, from the perspective of Latin America, from the perspective of countries, pride, et cetera. It's all very relevant for Puerto Rico. We also do personality tests and trust exercises and sports activities. Basically, we get to know and trust each other on these weekend retreats. That really is key, again, for our productivity. So let me just close with one of the big advantages of Latin America is the fact that there is this sort of familial culture that is key, in my opinion, for a really productive lab. In other words, there has to be some group bonding, some trust, and then this very free flow share of ideas, crazy ideas, fantasy ideas that can lead to new experiments and new approaches. And I think it's easier to do that, I think, in Latin America than it would be in the States, although it would work, anywhere. So I think that's a real advantage here. And I'm just going to we did publish a paper on this program, and I'll just show it on the screen now. That was a couple of years ago in the Journal of Neuroscience. We published this paper that basically goes through all these techniques and discusses how they work and how it's worked in Puerto Rico, and that they can be really done anywhere. And here are links to the text of the paper and also to a video that a couple of my undergraduates made about life in my lab and the points of this paper. So I will post these to the chat screen so you have these links. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Greg. This was, I think, very inspiring. Francesca?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I would like now to introduce Edna Matta-Camacho. She is actually from, is she here? I can see all of the, yes, there she is.
Yes, hi, hello, good morning.
See all the screens. Hi. Hello. Oh, I see it's 2:30 where you are. Okay, so I will leave you the floor.
Thank you very much, Francesca. And thank you very much to all the organizers in the ALBA Network for allowing me this opportunity to be here today. I would like to share my screen. Well, my name is Edna Matta. I am the founder of the foundation Sin Fronteras, Sin Without Borders. I have been working in the field of neuroscience since I was in master, and I was a research associate at Carleton University in neuroscience too, but now I'm working in Health Canada, more in the regulatory part of the therapeutic products. Today I'm going to talk about the experience that we have and some of the observations that we see in the rural areas working with the Sin Fronteras. So in the Sin Fronteras, we take education as a powerful basis for improving equal representation in any professional career, and in neuroscience included too. And that's why we decide to work in the rural areas where we see that many social disparities are affecting kids' education and the progress of the region. In Latin America, scientists have to face different challenges in order to succeed in their careers. Some of them, but not all, are here, such as socio-demographic disparities, lack of quality education, gender bias, and in socio-demographic disparities, we have what is rurality, ethnicity, and social economical status. During our work in the rural areas of Colombia, we have seen the lack of accessible education in the community, the lack of information because the demographic isolation, and we see the lack of empowerment in girls and women there, and all these factors contribute to the expansion of the gender and education gaps in the region, and as well discrimination against the students and the population in the rural areas. In Latin America, approximately 20% of the population resides or lives in the rural areas. And here is some information that the Economic Commission for the Latin America and the Caribbean reported in 2017, where here in the division of the map, we see several countries such as Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, with approximately 10 to 20% percentage of population living in the rural areas. Bolivia, Peru, close to 30%, and there are some countries in the Central America that have above 40% of population living in the rural areas. In Colombia, specifically, from the 50 million, a little above 50 million population, 26% lives in the rural areas. So we see the amount of people that is affected for these social disparities, and as well, it is an important effect in the education, as was shown here as well from the ECLAC, where they compared from many different countries in Latin America, the urban and rural areas, and they evaluate the years of schooling. And what they see here is in the rural areas, there's lower average of schooling years, fewer opportunities to complete secondary education, and limited access to university education to compare to urban youth. And actually, that's something that we see when we apply our activities in the rural areas and we have contact with the teachers. And they say the students from primary school or elementary school, they don't go to secondary school because it's far, or from the secondary school, they don't go to university because university are in the rural areas, and they don't have family, they don't have the means, and some of the times they don't have the information how to get access to university. So this is affecting their education. Additionally, there was another analysis in 3 different countries from Latin America too, of course, Ecuador, Mexico, and Venezuela, when they evaluate the impact in the indigenous population against the non-indigenous population. And what they see that was similar to what we saw in the previous image was that in the rural area, there is less years of education, and these numbers were worse, or there were worse indicators in the indigenous population when they have less and less years. So what we see is little by little there is less and less and less numbers. These places are with the lack of accessibility, and this is exactly what we have been trying to have in mind when we design our activities in STEM Sin Fronteras. We try to obtain the social context in the rural areas. We are trying to fight stereotypes with quality education, empowering women, and science communication to be able to bring tools and make accessible these strategies to students there to have a future. So what the potential solutions that we have in mind that could contribute to eliminate or to have equality or equity in science are train and educate underrepresented populations in the field of neuroscience. And that's something that we are doing in STEM Sin Fronteras. We are educating since the early age our kids, trying to get them in the notions of different science, including neuroscience, so they grow, that they have this seed and they grow their motivation. As well, we think that it's important to promote women's academic careers in neuroscience from early stage from the university, to promote to master to PhD students. And once they are there, I think that it is very important to create a safe, welcoming, inclusive, and nurturing state for trainees of all social demographic. We as scientists and academics to eliminate discrimination, to eliminate the bias, and to welcome and nurture these students to be able to retain these beautiful brains in science. Finally, but no less important, and actually I think that is the most important, is to increase knowledge mobility of the less favored regions and minorities in Latin America. Every time that we as scientists or academics have the opportunity to have a collaboration with Latin American scientists, or bring Latin American scientists or students to our laboratories, to our webinars, seminars, this is important step to inclusion, to open the perspective and increase the diversity in so many different fields in science. So this is what I wanted to tell you, and I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edna. This was very, very inspiring. And also, I think, very important what you show, the potential solutions. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Let's move then now to Valeria Ramirez. Valeria, are you there? Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yes, let me share my screen. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me. I'm going to talk very quickly about the dominance of English in science as a barrier. So first of all, let me tell you that we have had this idea that having English in science is positive because we need a vehicular language in science. However, science also can increase segregation and homogenization. In science, for example, people that are not native English speakers have higher disadvantage in publishing, have pressure for migration, have also economic expenses or dependence on editing and translation service from native English speakers. This also deepens socioeconomic income gap. As Zulma was saying, for example, in rural places, I would say, no one speaks English really in our countries. Also, I didn't say anything, but I'm from Colombia. There's also some effects on local communities. For example, the students have a difficulty in learning science because they learn science as something far from their own culture. It also causes a gap in political decisions within territories because people that are working in local communities are not reading in English, so they have not the access to papers. And also it increased the false idea that all knowledge is in English. I published a paper that I hope you got the link soon. And this paper is about PhD students in Colombia. And I found that they are almost always publishing in English. They also feel rejected by the journals. They are investing more time in writing in English than in Spanish, which means that they have less time to do research. They also have difficulties in writing and reading scientific papers. They also feel like they don't want to present in English. They feel more anxiety when presenting English. They are also using or asking for a lot of favors for editing in English, which means that this is a social cost and make us dependent from native English speakers. And I also found an influence of socioeconomics in the English proficiency, which how I was telling you, this could deepen this gap. So I would say that in general, English language dominance increases two gaps. The first, the global segregation between the global south, the global north scientists, which have better English, and the global south scientists. And then also social segregation inside our countries. So why not just to learn English? So this is because it's unfair for non-native speakers because everything relies on the individual. If we have socioeconomical, a good socioeconomical income, if the country has a situation that can help us to have better English education, but also this increases ableism, which means that people that are not capable of learning second languages because of different cognitive differences between humans, then they are also segregated from this. And also, these multilingualisms also benefit science because we can broader observations because language is an idea of what we see. So we can have more we can ask broader questions if we ask that in different languages. So what can be done? First of all, we should translate our work to the local language where we are working on. And also within science, we can also strengthen translation and editing networks and platforms. We can provide editing and translating support. We can include in editing services and publication. We should increase also multilingualism in editorial publishing system to feel like we are part of science too. And also in conferences and webinars, we should have also some ideas like closed captioning all the webinars, like simultaneous translation of conferences. And of course, I don't have all the ideas, but I'm welcome to listen or to hear other ideas. And that's everything that I wanted to say.
Thanks so much, Valeria. Very
Of course.
stimulating. I think we will be discussing afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And so I will now ask the last panelist, José Luis Pena, to please introduce himself and then give us his talk, his brief talk. Please, José.
Hello, thank you. Share my screen first. So, thank you very much to the ALBA Network. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for inviting me to bring up issues about the LGBTQ individuals, right? Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, that they have to deal with that affects their personal and professional lives. I am a neuroscientist and a member of the LGBT community. I am a professor at the neuroscience department at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, New York, and feel lucky about it. But must admit that one of the reasons I moved to the US is because I felt more comfortable being a gay man in the US than in Uruguay, where I'm originally from, and that living home might make my parents and grandparents be less worried about my lifestyle. So this was 20 years ago. These days, tolerance to sexual orientation is better in several parts of the world, including countries in Latin America. Still, growing up as an LGBT person remains difficult in many countries and society. Fortunately, academic environments can afford discussing these issues in a rational manner, and today's webinar is fortunately a proof of it. So to a certain extent, I'll tell you that LGBT issues are not very different from other gender-related ones, like women in science, right? Still, even in the US, being a gay neuroscientist, it often feels a rather lonely endeavor. So in the next slides, I'm going to provide you ideas of my opinion about barriers and strengths for the LGBT community and some action plans. So let's go to barriers, right? So the LGBT community is a small minority. So we are a small percentage of the people and will naturally remain one forever. So everyone else around will be more likely straight, and people will naturally make this assumption. That basically forces LGBT individuals to come out of the closet to every new person they meet. And this is a fact, but it isn't easy having to clarify who we are all the time. And on the other hand, being a boyish girl or a girlish boy, which may be a way to avoid having to come out of the closet, can cause rejection by society. Not only is a minority, a small minority, but the representation in scientific and academic environments is often lower than expected by the common percentage of across people, right? So making LGBT individuals seen as rare and unexpected in scientific communities. So the next point, next barrier is acts of hate, and explicit or implicit, right? And what I mean is that unfortunately, the LGBT community still suffers from discriminatory and demeaning attacks. For example, most countries in Latin America use derogatory words to refer to LGBT people. And I'm not going to use the words to not offend you, but I bet that most of you know slang terms that are used to define LGBT people and also used for cursing and for insulting, right? And calling people coward and weak. Right? Transgender people are particularly victims of hate crimes. Many especially trans women, have to emigrate out of Latin America after being attacked, right? So overall, the traumatic effect, right, of early life discrimination on personality and self-confidence trickles down academic and scientific performance of LGBT individuals. Point 3, false stigmatizing arguments based on dogma. For many, being an LGBT person is considered a disease, a religious sin, a pervert behavior. Bolsonaro, Brazil's president, recently baited presidential staff who were wearing COVID masks, claiming them that it was coxa deviado, mean it's an homophobic slur that it means that it's for fairies. Fairies wear masks, right? And also he said that Brazil must not become a gay tourism paradise. Evo Morales, Bolivia's president, 2010, he said that eating chicken, because it contained female hormones, would deviate male behavior, right? So a lot of things that basically are used to attack being an LGBT person, right? Point 4, scientific focus on objectivity may affect consideration of personal issues, right? Sexual orientation is often considered irrelevant among scientists because personal issues are seen as inconsistent with the idea of objectivity and neutrality. Thus, it is sometimes difficult to bring up these topics for discussion among scientists. Then finally, sense of isolation. The sense of feeling rare as LGBT person among faculty, researchers, students affects the community, right? Makes students unable to see role models with similar personal lifestyles, and even makes faculty, right, to feel role models for no one, right? Who are our students who have a similar lifestyle? Okay, so after all these barriers, let's try to see the positive side of life. So strengths of diversity and inclusion in brain research, including LGBT community. So benefits of diversity. Diversity and inclusion in academic environments not only meets human rights, but it also helps creativity, especially for brain science, where some of our scientific questions are close to philosophical questions, right? Such as understanding the mechanisms of the mind, diversity of thoughts, experience, backgrounds, right, among brain scientists enhances creativity and big picture approaches, right? 2, social perceptiveness, probably developed by the need to detect signs of latent discrimination, right? By looking at people's faces and attitudes. We LGBT individuals are often sensitive to social dynamics and able to sense people's feelings, right? For example, the nice and friendly chair in my department, he often asks me, how do I think my colleagues are feeling these days, right? Versatility. The fluidity or versatility of gender-related behaviors across LGBT people can serve as a bridge across polarity of genders. For example, I met recently Joni Wallis. She's a professor in Berkeley, and I think the only current tenured professor trans woman neuroscientist in the US. I invited her to give a talk at Einstein, and we had a meeting and we had a very interesting conversation. Something she said is, since I became a woman, I realized the problems of women in science. So when I invited her to give a talk, we organized a Women in Science meeting with her together with some female colleagues and female students. It was really well received, right? And then finally, right, accepting attitude of LGBT people. Due to personal life experience, LGBT individuals are often accepting of differences and unifying members of groups. That this should help implementing diversity in workforce, right? So let's now talk about potential actions to address these issues, right? So what actions do we need to increase acceptability of LGBT people, right? So one important one, I think, is respectful visibility. Coming out to students and colleagues, as I've just done with you, in a natural and sensible way, right? Not attacking necessarily, helps to reduce the sense of isolation, but also makes society more familiar about it and diminishes reactive attitudes. Explicit support of equal rights, right? In scientific and academic communities, it's important not to dismiss the problem because the idea of scientists of being neutral and objective, right? So we have to pay attention to these issues, right? 3, equal opportunities without being equal, right? Issues about underrepresented groups often lead us, right, to mimic behavior of overrepresented groups. However, groups should not submit to pressure to conform, right? We are not all equal, but we should have equal opportunities. Avoid personality cults, right? So personality cast linking certain behavioral traits as the basis of charismatic and successful leaders can affect adaptability of persons that are different, right, and do not match these arbitrary criteria, so it's worth considering. Safe work environments. Developing offices and committees involved in promoting and protecting diversity and inclusion is often an efficient way of addressing this goal. And then finally, training. We must know that discriminatory acts are often based on unconscious biases and lack of information, right? That's training people, right? And give them information about the importance of racial and gender diversity and concepts, just as unconscious bias, gender diversity, what cisgender means, transgender woman, transgender man, right? This contributes to increased visibility of underrepresented groups, and also the awareness of people of consequence of acts, right, and attitudes. Right? So to finish, right, as you probably heard now, the LGBT community is affected by issues about diversity and inclusion across the world, including countries in Latin America. These factors are not substantially different from other gender-related issues, like women in science and other underrepresented groups, right? And progress towards enhancing diversity and inclusion of underrepresented groups in general, right, including the LGBTQ, will be beneficial to brain science and society. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think these last words were very, very, very nice. No, the fact that well, first of all, to promote diversity is good, is a value that should be pursued, and also the fact that what is beneficial to brain science and society is so it's beneficial for you know, for women, for minorities, for so there is an extended we can think of an extended list of beneficiaries of all of this. And I think the other important thing you said is training. We need to let people understand what this all means. Okay, I will leave to Carmen to take the lead now.
Yes, thank you. I think we have a lot of points for a follow-up. Maybe something to share with the attendees is that we intend to write also a paper from all these different ideas so that we can identify the barriers. And I could see some barriers are a little bit different to other regions. And I think this is interesting to highlight. And also I think you all proposed many different ways of tackling. But now I would like to go to the questions from the public. Answers now. So let's start with one of them. I think there were very interesting questions. Some of them have been answered already. There is one that I think it's relevant to what we are doing now. Thinking in future actions to increase equality between men and women, how can men contribute to this? Nowadays, there is a strong male community that help each other, while this sense of belonging is completely absent when working, collaborating with a woman colleague. Anybody would like to answer this? How men, maybe we have two men here, can contribute to the networking of women also and promotion of women somehow?
Well, I would say the obvious answer to that is train women. And like on our retreats, we deal with issues like women in science, men versus women's styles of discussion and talking about data, et cetera. And to really, most of my students are women. And I think that's probably true of a number of panelists here, a number of people, that the majority, at least in the United States, the majority of graduate students in neuroscience are women. Women is the future of neuroscience, not men. And that's the truth. So the idea is to overcome, your own stigma, my own stigma as a white male, to overcome that, create a welcoming environment, and really empower, help empower women to achieve their goals in the lab. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I would say that train women and train men, right? I think that it's good to tell boys and men, right, what behaviors are not good for women, right? And I think it is welcome. Usually men, sometimes men have behaviors, right, several parts of science, right? So I'm a gay man, right? I work in computational neuroscience, and men are sometimes very kind of active and attacking, right? About discussions, right? And being in touch with my feminine side, sometimes I wish they knew I was gay, so they treat me more like a woman, but more respectfully and kindly, right? So I think that we all need to learn, right, whether our behavior affects people with other types of personalities, right?
And I feel that another thing is education from the beginning, because we are in a society that have a strong men position, and as women we have to educate them too. So this is from the beginning. If my kid has to organize, wash the dishes, help with everything, not like before that just girls went to the kitchen. So these are small things that maybe improve of the mentality of the all together. We are in the same position and we have to do all the same activities. We can't do that.
Edna?
I totally agree. And actually, there is something that I have been taking for myself is now that we are aware, because there is different talks and different activities now that we are aware that we need to promote more, is when we are organizing, for example, conferences or activities, try to have equal representation. We can see that. We see there are more men, let's invite more women, or let's be more inclusive in our language. So I think that this is very important, because as Elaine said, this is a circle. So if we don't give visibility, we have less opportunities. So this is a very important way to be aware and to take actions in those small things to increase visibility. I think that's important.
Very, very important point, Sam. Let's move to another question. There is a question that it says, it would be nice to know whether the bias in gender in highest rates it's only for academic merits. If this is true, we have to aggressively support academic careers during motherhood. And I think this is a point that has been raised several times today, how to tackle these barriers somehow. Somebody would like to answer this?
I would like to add some piece of information about this. This is not actually true, at least for some of the data we have collected. For example, in our national research system, the academic merit of the few women that are in the highest level are higher than men's. I mean, it is not only, it is a bit different if you divide this, for example, in scientific papers production, that would be equal or maybe even biased to men, but it requires more effort and more credentials to get to the highest level for women than for men. So that is something that I think it's weird, and it not depends on the academic merit of women. It is that it's not visible. It is there, but it is not well recognized. And of course, we here always go to examples, but I think that the examples are good to give idea of the big picture also. But I wanted to point that.
Yeah, I agree totally with Ana, because, for example, if you are married, you have to take care of home, the number of publications, the time that you have to write, of course, is less than your husband, because your husband always stay more time in the office, take more time for do this kind of readings and writings, and it's absolutely different. So the merit is not like the same. We cannot measure at the same, no? This is not always equal. And if you have students that are girls and mothers, they just want to finish the master because they are at least here in Colombia, they are paying for the master. I studied my master and my PhD in Mexico with fellowship, but here we don't have those opportunities. We have to pay. So of course they want to get the title. So you get the master degree, and if you didn't publish during the master, I'm sorry. Now is the problem of the mentor because he or she has to publish. So it's difficult. It's not that easy.
Of course, something that we discussed when we had meetings earlier to prepare this webinar was that perhaps one action point that we could have is to meet with some of the policymakers and stakeholders, and maybe having different career tracks or evaluating differently, because otherwise what we are proposing is also that we have to fix the women somehow. We need to train them more, and it's not so easy. And I think we have to recognize diversity in other ways. So maybe this is something to take a note and then follow up in this if you think it's important. Francesca, would you like to follow up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in this sense, for example, the ALBA declaration is something that could help because it gives institutions some key points to take on in order to ensure diversity and equal opportunities. So I think it's really something, it's very dry in a way, but it's very to the point. So it's something that can be proposed very easily. Just, you know, do you want to do something? Take this on, and you know, this will definitely help. Another thing I wanted to raise is we never talked about technology. And this came to my mind from the talk of Valeria when she said, you know, we have to pay for translation. I think technology could be, at least this is what I think, but I would like to know your opinion. The technology in the future could actually help, right? Because already having Google Translator can make life easier many times. And so I wanted to know Valeria's opinion about this. How technology can help in you know, face these diversity issues, especially the barriers, the language barriers.
So thank you. Yes, of course, a lot. Actually, I wrote that paper in Spanish and I translated it with a translation machine. I think it's very useful, and we should be maybe collaborating also with the people that are in translation studies, because that's also something that happens and we are not talking with them to make us our life easier. Yes, definitely. I just think that this should come from everywhere, like also from native English speakers, because we also need to push them to publish also in our languages, because we are not only communicating between scientists, but also with people that are in the local community. So it should be like reciprocal, something like that. Yeah.
So next time we organize this webinar in Spanish and Portuguese, perhaps. Eh?
Can I say something?
Yes.
I think that I had an experience with a female student. She's very smart, right? And so she graduated, and then she was deciding where to do the postdoc. And at the same time, a male student, graduated and was in a postdoc. They both rejected invitations from other labs because they wanted to go to one lab. For the boy, everybody called him, he really knows what he wants. And for her, everybody says she's obsessed about this lab, right? So I think that the way women are evaluated is different. It's more about psychological issues. Women are very rapidly, people find psychological issues, right? And it's different from men. So we have really evaluated women and men personalities in different manners, and that should be addressed, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think perhaps training in implicit bias and other also explicit bias could be good. I have also questions, I think, to follow up with the question and answers from the attendees are related to this publishing and the fees and all these issues that were brought up by Elaine also. And then also Valeria brought the issues of the language and the writing and then the training also here. perhaps an action point that we could propose is to have a meeting, kind of a webinar with publishers, I was thinking. And yeah, I also would like to hear the reaction of others to Valeria's proposal, because normally we could do the opposite, Valeria, to what you propose, trying to launch a very strong training program in English, for example, for the region, so that somehow we give more equal opportunities. You are proposing something difficult, but I would like to hear if, yeah, what other panelists think about this, how to tackle the language and also the barriers related to the socioeconomic access to the journals, being acquainted with writing in English and presenting in English, etc. What could we do there?
Can
Yes.
I speak a little? When I think about languages, we all understand that once it was the German language, the language of science. Another time it was French, and before was Latin. So there was always a language of science. And nowadays is English. I have my concerns related to this language because of the powerful influence. If you are lucky and you were born in the USA, you don't have problems, okay? And the rest of the world, you know, full of things to think about. It isn't just a problem for publication. You can imagine it that young girls and boys, if they are in a presentation like that, if they don't know well English, they can't be here. They cannot understand, they can't participate. So even, for example, when we are, or last year, when we were sure that the Falang meeting would be in September 2020, you know, we were organizing discussions with groups that were discussing women, gender and sex and, you know, and other things. But how to do that? Because English is the language of science and most of the guys speak in English. And even if somebody comes from Spain, from Italy or from another countries, and we speak in Portuguese, who is going to pay attention to what we are speaking? They can't say things also. So I sometimes think that if everybody could have the same chance, the same opportunity to learn this language, would be very good for everyone. Now is the time of English. Unhappily, I would love that would be the time for Portuguese, but what can I do? What can we do? Learn this language. And maybe ALBA, IBRO can help with those things, no? I don't know what you think, but...
I think there are many things that could be done. This reminds me a program that I heard a few years ago regarding, I think it was launched by Miguel Nicolelis in Brazil, and it was to foster scientific thinking and also interest in kids. And it was, I think, very targeted to promote this and have an impact. And I think this could be done. I think we can discuss more, not necessarily in a webinar, but we can discuss more what we could do. So I really think this could be a follow-up. Yes.
Yeah, and I'd like just to add that we can easily identify readers, people who, you know, I'd be happy to read manuscripts and correct English things. In other words, have a network of people that are happy to toss back and forth manuscripts for quick corrections, track changes, and that we should do.
Edna?
That's true, that's true.
Yes, actually, those are very good ideas because as well, it goes with the English, but as well go with other languages. For example, in the ethnic, non-indigenous, and the indigenous communities, some of the delays that they have is because they cannot even speak Spanish, or so even less English, for example, in Colombia. So it is important to have some degree of accessible information to them in their language. And at the same time, I don't know if this is something that I think perhaps the journals aware that are in charge of publishing the papers should have a committee, as Gregory said, perhaps a group of reviewers that are in different languages, and they review or help with translation. There should be an easy accessibility to this kind of helps. I think so.
just one very quick. Paul Bolan was the editor of the European Journal of Neuroscience from France. And I remember he came here to Ribeirão Preto and he was giving a seminar. And he told us that he and his friend, that both were the editors of the journal, they never refuse a paper just because of the English quality. If the results, if the idea, if the work was something, you know, interesting, important, the English would be the second problem, secondary. So to have a mentality like that between the journals, editors, would be something really important also, okay?
I'm sorry, Elaine.
No,
I just wanted to say that I understand your concern, but I think it's like any other very difficult segregation problem. Like, it's not different from women in science. It's not different from LGBTQ community in science. Actually, it's something that is historical, but it's not impossible to change. So I think it's also making us think how to do that. It's going to be difficult, but it's not something that we cannot do. So just changing a little bit how we phrase that is also good.
I think it's very good that you bring it up, because indeed nowadays there are more and more methods, and also we can organize other ways, as Greg is offering, to counteract that. And then slowly this is always a learning curve. People can grow as well with the science if they see progress somehow that they can publish, as it was said before. So I think it's up to us as well to have impact there. I was thinking with all this training that indeed there was this focus in Brazil, but I heard also that the SFN used to have something like an academy of Latin American scientists. Are you familiar with this? So I think they were training or having courses, and those that were excellent were afterwards offered to go to other courses in the US, no? It's Greg, you're familiar with this? You think something like this works, or you think we have to think something completely different?
Well, that was focused on, it was a program focused together with the Grass Foundation on training neuroscientists in Latin America, Central and South America. And but I think this would be really targeting all scientists, having really an available cadre of readers and reviewers who could assist with English. That hasn't been done at the Society for Neuroscience to date, but it's something maybe ALBA could put together.
Very good. Yeah, in ALBA we are thinking indeed to develop a kind of a mentoring program, and also maybe one based on working together with people from different parts of the world. Let's see how it works. But this is, I think, very useful from what we are discussing today. I think what we can do a lot of things already.
And maybe ALBA could also access funds to pay the publication charges as well. So those are the two kind of problems about publishing a paper. Maybe ALBA could help address both.
Yeah, I think indeed we have to put all the action points that are important and then discussing with stakeholders that are relevant. Yes, Elaine?
Like this program from Society for Neuroscience, IBRO have a program that's called Visiting Lecturer Team. And this program takes a group of scientists that goes to places where neuroscience is, let's say, is starting. Okay, so I have been teaching in this group, and I heard several, descriptions of former students, how much was important in their lives to have this kind of thing. Professor John Nichols and Jack McMahon were the head of these programs. And for example, I was a student in 1994. It changed my life. And it was really very important to me when I saw very high-level scientists just telling us, I am here for you, students. So my time is for you all the time. It is something really it was for me a wonderful program as a student and as a teacher, a professor there. So it's something to think about. This program is excellent, in my opinion, okay?
Yes, we have one of the attendees that would like to talk, Maria Castelló. I'm going to allow you to talk, Maria. She left. Okay, she left. Anybody wanted to say something here? Edna?
Yeah, that this program, we invite, in fact, all the group to Colombia when I recently get back. Was very nice, but now that we are talking about gender, could be even better if we have more girls, because just Elaine must belong to that group. So even with more girls, probably we get more enforced to get students, females, women's working in science.
Very good. I think on the sake of time, we should start thinking about finalizing this. I was wondering if Francesca has any remaining point. I think we could continue for several hours, but perhaps it's important also to now reflect on everything that was said and also identify what should be the follow-up. And I think everybody will be consulted for your input.
Yeah.
Francesca.
Yeah, it's really difficult to actually wrap it up because there are so many issues that have been brought up. I think what we can say is that there is nothing really new in a way, but there is a lot to be done. So I think this is the first thing we should say. I think we can definitely say that there are a lot of issues. These issues should be tackled from the very beginning, from school. I think promoting education and raising awareness of biases very early on, I think this is key. And this would also allow women to, not to have biases towards entering, for example, neuroscience or brain sciences. Because sometimes I got the feeling from the IBRO-Larc survey that there might be a bias, before even deciding to join a certain academic career. So we should prevent that bias from even, it's not a matter of succeeding. It's a matter of preventing themselves from even trying to succeed. And then the other thing, I think it's been also said, and it's something we have to work on. Women should be empowered in terms of getting into also administration and politics, because it is through this that, if they get into the administration of the institutions, then they can really make a difference and also get into politics and influence politics, because that is another very, very key issue. So I don't know if it's not enough. I mean, there are so many things that have been said, but we will definitely follow up on this and follow ALBA. And I think we will, we are open to suggestions and ideas. We are here for you. And thank you very much.
Indeed, thank you all the panelists and also all the participants. I think we had over 100 people joining today at different time points, not all at the same time, but I think it was a wonderful experience for me at least, and I think we advanced a lot in some of our thinking. Thanks so much, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.